Saran from Saran and Company in India. It's good to see you. It's been we missed February, but here we are. We nearly missed March.
We did. Thank you for having me again, Addison. It's a pleasure to be back.
Always delighted to talk with you and obviously catch up with the explosive commercial aviation market of India.
Yes.
There's been quite a bit of news across the airline space. Maybe we can go through that.
Absolutely. And I think in preparation for this call, there was so much to talk about that it was a bit difficult to narrow down which points are really important. But I think one of the points which, if you allow me to bring up is, and which has been at the forefront of my mind and experience, is SpiceJet. You know, the underdog, as they say, who's a cat who's living its 18th life now. Well, after a series of insolvencies, applications filed against them, the news now is fairly positive, where you're only getting positive press regarding Spice. I've experienced it myself. They're settling dues of creditors with lessors, and it's been very, very interesting. So kudos to them.
How come they've now got money?
Well, they had a little bit of capital infusion a couple of weeks ago, but they have primarily used that capital infusion to pay off creditors. I think they do realize that it's a very small industry, and you can't have outstanding debt and then look for new creditors on the other side. They're virtually just this one large bubble. So I think they've used that very smartly, and they have positioned themselves where they realize who the important players are in the market. So one example is the Canadian government, the Export Development
Sure.
ECD,
all those -8s.
EDC, sorry. Yes, exactly. So the latest news is that they've settled with them. So that's an excellent move. And what's very promising is that they seem to be wet leasing aircraft. It's promising and bizarre at the same time. They have found an airline from Cambodia to wet lease 2 A320s from. So it's an AvGeek's delight, but very good news all around.
SpiceJet is a 737 operator.
That is correct, but these are wet leases, so they get the
no. It's interesting that they would do that. That's fascinating.
I think again, I can't say this with much certainty, but from the limited experience I have, their fleet seems to be quite disjointed at the moment. So I think to really get back on track, they need they need to plateau out and have the same sort of aircraft. I think they're on their way to do that.
Right, that's interesting. Then the next one on your list is Akasa. This is something that is this is like the timing on this. Right, the timing of the start of this airline, the ability to get MAX 8s on the fly so quickly.
Yes,
this is exquisite timing. I don't know how else to describe it.
Absolutely, and it's it's one person's downfall, which is another person's win, and they have really been a beneficiary of Boeing's difficult times. And yes, they are Maxes, and the Max has been in a lot of negative press of late, but they've managed to do what they have. So kudos to them that they've crossed that threshold of 20 aircraft, and they managed to fly internationally for the first time. And they have a lot of work to do, though. I will give you one example of a family member the other day who's a very frequent traveler, business traveler, and her response to me was, "What is Akasa Air?" So for us in our little aviation bubble, it's all well and good, and we know who they are, but overall there's a lot of territory to conquer.
To your point about the Max and the news about the Max, it's becoming a bit hysterical, actually. I did an analysis yesterday called "Who's getting the most out of their Max," and I was amazed to look at the data. The Max 8 is, in terms of efficiency, is the segment leader. It's more efficient than the 320neo. in terms of fuel burn and you know, when you look at range and payload, so to speak. It's the more effective airplane. So a Casa Air not only benefited from, as you say, Boeing needed to move Maxes and offered them a deal. They had Maxes available, but in getting the Max 8, they got the segment leader in terms of productivity, performance. Look, the Max had problems. Hopefully they're being fixed. But the airplane is, for those people who are in the industry, as you said, you know, we're in the bubble. Those of us who look at the operational numbers, the Max 8 performance economically is amazing. It's really good.
I believe so. I believe so. And we're talking about these aircraft being around for a decade or more. And that's a long time for them to, you know, do what they do best.
By the way, the analysis that we've done is looking at the US DOT data. The Max 9,
yes,
funnily enough, is the greenest airplane in the US. It's US service. It's because the Max is lighter than the 320 equivalent. So like the Max 9 is lighter than the 321. Well, the 321 happens to be a lot larger. It would be a better comparison, Max 9, a bigger part, Max 10 to 321.
correct.
But the bottom line is that the Max 9 has the lowest emissions because it has the lowest fuel burn per seat.
Right.
Anyway, I digress.
And I think, and one last point on that. I don't think a lot of your and our viewers realize how many Maxes are flying around. You know, I was mentioning to you that I'm traveling to the US in the next couple of weeks. It's virtually impossible to be in the US and not have a Max, you know, on your itinerary because they're all over the place, and it's quite fantastic.
Well, there's one way to avoid it is to fly Delta. Then you definitely won't have a Max. Anyway, let's move on to Fly 91. This is another startup which is fantastic because who doesn't love a startup? And you cheer for them, and then you sit back and you watch.
Well,
how do you feel about them?
I'm fairly bullish about them because I think they have a good plan. They're based in, you know, India's holiday town of Goa, so that's dear to my heart. I've also been involved very interestingly in a few of their aircraft transactions, you know, for lessors, etc. And they're very professional. You know, you can gauge what an airline is going to be like by just their responses to very simple questions, and they have been, you know, on the ball. They have been extremely professional, and they are definitely, you know, one to look out for. So it's you know, watch this space.
I'm so glad that you suggested we talk about this airline because, as you know from our previous conversations, I'm a big believer in regional service for India.
Yes.
Now, I know all the great reasons that you and Vinny before all explained to me, but Fly 91 is turboprop, okay? So you could, like, SpiceJet also has turboprops. So I suppose they're still flying them. The way that you would get the emerging Indian travel market to explode even more is connecting all the dots. And you cannot do that with a full-size 320 or 737. The economics don't always work.
Right.
You know, for example, in the US, you've got Southwest, which is now the world's biggest operator of the Max. And they keep taking delivery of Max 8s, but they don't want that. They want the Max 7. They want the 149 seats. They don't need the 170.
Correct.
You know, you have to fly all 170 seats around and hunting for people, and you can't turn the plane fast enough. So the lesson from the US is that even if a company like Southwest is struggling with a Max 8 being too big for many markets, how much more so would it be the case in India? So I'm very pleased to see that you know, you've got this startup, and we've got Indigo has got a lot of turboprops, SpiceJet has turboprops. I remember you guys have always told me that there doesn't need to be anything in between those. like a regional jet. You know, those two markets can feed each other effectively, and that looks like a lot like the case in Brazil, where you have big planes and turboprops and nothing in between. It's a very intriguing thing.
It is a very intriguing thing, and I think it's a factor of the market settling down. You know, letting the dust settle, which I predict will be the next decade or even two. So we're not talking about something overnight. But I do believe that we will be some sort of combination of, you know, the United States mixed with Brazil, and we'll find our own sort of niche, you know, per se. But I agree with you. I think it's uh, filling so many seats at the end of the day is a difficult task. And once you get over the hype of, you know, sale and leaseback, and as the market matures, I think you know, people become more sensible and look for metal that can fly the right amount of people.
Right. Basically, there's an old hunting saying: use enough gun.
Correct.
Just enough.
Just enough, not too much and not too little.
Yep. Yeah, because there's a cost either way. The next one that you have on your list is Vistara. Now, this is a brand that had, you know, came out at the top of the food chain in terms of it was the little Singapore.
Yes.
Right. And Singapore still has an interest, correct?
Absolutely. And in fact, they've just the Singapore competition authorities have very recently, you know, cleared the merger of Vistara with Air India. So I believe everything now has fallen in place for them to complete the merger, except one thing, is the merger of the mindset and the merger of the environment of the two airlines.
Right.
And I think the decision which was recently taken to, you know, put things on the back burner, take them slowly, is a very wise decision between the two, because without a doubt Vistara is fantastic, and I have a personal example which I would actually like to share. Last week I took an Air India flight after 2009, and the flight I took it my first one since 2009. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And my last one, which I took in 2009, was for selfish reasons, because I wanted to fly the A330, which Air India had got two of, and I knew the pilots, etc. So it was a fun sort of avgeek flight. But
I've not.
I've consciously not flown Air India's for over 2 decades, and so this time the connections worked out, and it. You know, a lot of my friends work at Air India now, you know, whether it's their general counsel and, you know, their corporate communications personnel. So it's, you know, you feel that you're one of them. So, it warrants a chance. And you can see the crew is trying very hard with a semi-substandard product. You know, I'll give you one example. There were 12 seats in business class on this A320 from Phuket in Thailand to New Delhi. It's a 4.5 hour, you know, stage length, so quite perfect for the A320, and very comfortable seats. You know, it's like you're back in the 1980s sitting on a big couch. But you have to, the gentleman or the lady next to you has to get up in case you want to, you know, exit your seat, and you're in business class, and it just doesn't make sense. And they're very small, niggling things where Air India really does have to improve. And but Vistara is already there. It's blown everything out of the park. So it's going to be a tough one, in my opinion, merging those two sentimentalities.
Right. You know, the Air India is going to say, well, we've been around forever. Yes. We're the big dog, and Vistara is the cute one. So,
well, let me put that a little differently. I think Vistara is the more professional one. And I know I'm sticking my head out over here by saying that. You know, by no means am I saying Air India lacks professionalism, but Vistara knows what, you know, the common day traveler requires and what he or she wants. Air India is more, you know, stuck in its legacy ways where they want to get to work, they want to finish their work as efficiently as possible and get home. Vistara crew will go. Yes.
Just to clarify, when you're speaking about professionalism, you talk about cabin service, nothing else, not technical.
Nothing else. I mean,
right.
I would term cabin service as well as ground service. In the same. I would paint them in with.
So the passenger facing service side.
Correct. Which I think for most of the traveling public is possibly the most important.
Sure.
There were small niggling issues that I had. I couldn't sign up my daughter and wife to the frequent flyer program. There were the one-time passwords were not coming. So they're very, very small, niggling IT issues or other issues that they may have. But I think it's smart for them to work those out before they, merge it with Vistara.
All right. Speaking about big dogs, let's talk about Indigo.
Well, Indigo has grown from strength to strength.
Unbelievable.
Really.
That is, I think anybody watching this industry, those of us in the bubble, look at this with awe.
Yes. And so do I. I've always told them that they're the most un-Indian run Indian company ever, because they are so efficient. The people they hire are absolutely brilliant, and they've really reached they've made some of the smartest statements an airline can make globally, which is, look, we're looking to move away from the sale and leaseback model. We're sitting on this whole bunch of cash. We're looking to invest that cash in ourselves, which is investing in finance leases and aircraft of our own, which is really smart, because after 8 or 10 years, those aircraft are going to be theirs, and they're free for them to fly and make money off them. And it's whether they actually get wide bodies or not. I know this has been in the news for a long time.
Right.
Whether they were going to get the Dreamliner or they're going to get the A350s. Personally, if you ask me, they're so close to Airbus that I'm sure things can be worked out for the A350, but I don't know. I think this is one of those aspects where once it happens, we can really confirm it as to what they get, if they get.
Right. Well, it happens that for Indigo, actually the first step in that direction might be the 330 Neo might be more effective.
Correct.
Shorter waiting period for deliveries.
Mm-hmm.
Can do almost anything that a 350 or 787 can do for a lot less money. Meaning you've got an airplane that can probably do 65 or 70% of what those others can do, meaning it doesn't have that same range, really.
Right.
But it has all the other fixings and capabilities. So,
and I believe it's easier for them to have their pilots transfer from the 320 to the 330 as opposed to the 350. I don't know that for a fact, but I believe that's what I read.
Right. And I think that would be a good interim step for them. Then finally, you always have to have one, right? Go first.
Well, go first is it's we're still where we are when we spoke.
You mean like go never?
Go never or gone, as they would say. No, it's a shame. Go first has been a very shameful story for Indian aviation, and we still have very hopeful lessors who, just for your information, there's the 330-day period since the insolvency started ends on on the 4th of April. And the law states that they have to return all the aircraft, they have to return all the assets, and that's the end of the matter. But from what I hear, again, cannot confirm this because it's from the press, that they are looking for an extension beyond that point. But the lessors are very adamant, and I believe a lot of them are moving into India now to try and get their aircraft back after the 4th. Right. So let's hope some sense prevails, because I don't know who's leading the pack at Go, but if you fight with your lessors, no one's going to lease you an aircraft. So it kind of, I don't understand where they're coming from.
One last thought. We have all those old airplanes from Jet.
Yes.
The 777s. What's going to happen to those airplanes? Why didn't somebody use them?
I believe, and this is first-hand experience from a recent conference we were at. There are lots of potential interested purchasers of those aircraft, but I believe the 777s specifically, but I believe none of them want to ever operate them again. So the value that people are seeing in those aircraft is part out value or scrap.
Okay. Just haven't been used long enough. Then the one last thing I wanted to hear about from is the DGCA's flight time, pilot flight time. That seems to be a hot topic there.
Well, it's a very hot topic at the moment. So a few weeks ago, to give you a little bit of background, whenever you meet any pilot in this country, they are exhausted. So I have a fair few friends of mine who are pilots. So I can say that with a fair bit of certainty that you can tell when another human he's exhausted, he enjoys his job, but in general he or she is tired. That's obviously translated and moved to the regulator, and there was action taken where certain amendments were made to the flight duty time limitations, etc. And it was hailed as a very good move. The aviation minister tweeted about it and made public statements about these new civil aviation requirements. But I believe on the ground, what airlines, their feedback was that it would result in them having to hire up to 20% more flight crew to comply with those regulations. The regulations stipulated that they had to implement these by the 1st of June. So it gave the airlines a fair bit of time. And of course, the airlines are arguing that it's not enough time. But the DGCA has very recently, day before yesterday, in fact, amended that civil aviation requirement to remove that 1st of June deadline. And they've made it slightly loosely worded, saying as and when the airlines can comply with the updated regulations. So that's caused a huge hue and cry by the pilot community, by the people who are interested in safety. So it's a very strong safety argument that's being made. In my opinion, it's a very difficult situation to be in aviation where there's no compromise on safety, but commercial aspects are paramount. So it's a very difficult situation to be in. I just hope the airlines can kick in those new regulations as soon as possible and comply with the 1st of June date, even though it's not a deadline anymore.
Nitin, thank you so much. I really appreciate the conversation.
It's a pleasure to be back. Thank you.